It's every Red Raiders favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, it's the Juice on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Gus and Clint. Aaron, time for some headlines brought to you by our friends at Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. Some headlines. We'll start with Texas Tech. Some good and bad news. Texas Tech senior defensive back Malik Dunlap has announced today on Twitter that he will be returning for another year at Texas Tech. He announced that using one of my favorite scenes from cinema, The Wolf of Wall Street, the I'm Not Bleepin' Leavin' with Leonardo DiCaprio. Super solid. New favorite player. Good for him.
That's a big one.
That is a big one.
That really is along the lines of Hutchings and Bradford.
I mean, it's gigantic. I mean, you're just kind of like, oh, we were not going to have a starter returning in that position, but oh wait, now we are.
Yep.
It's gigantic. Some not so great news. Mark Adams said that Dino Baccio rolled an ankle the end of the win over Nichols, and Baccio is now 50-50 tomorrow night. Jalen Tyson, meanwhile, worked out yesterday, according to Adams, and is expected to play tomorrow against Eastern Washington.
Trading one for the other.
Mississippi State football coach Mike Leach remains hospitalized and in critical condition. That, according to the university, a statement released earlier today. Leach suffered what was called Sunday a personal health issue that occurred at home. The Clarion Ledger reported yesterday that Leach had a massive heart attack. And then finally, Texas men's basketball coach Chris Beard was arrested this morning on a felony domestic violence charge. He was arrested by police in Austin, booked at 4:18 a.m. on a third-degree charge of assault of a family/household member and strangulation. He was released from the Travis County Jail just about 30 minutes ago after posting a cash bond. Texas is scheduled to play basketball tonight. That game will, of course, still be played. We are awaiting word from Austin as to whether or not Beard will be on the sidelines. I can't imagine he will be, but that has not been officially announced yet. You too can join the program. Love to hear from you on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. Let's get to some chats, some text here on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. This on the chat line from C. Kennedy. Palliative care has begun. Sadly, Leach is gone unless a crazy miracle was to happen. They say R.I.P. Mike Leach. Somebody says this. Needless to say, Chris Beard should be fired. Someone else asks, does UT fire him? I feel like they will try to survive this. Casey says, are they going to let him coach tonight? Rachel says, surely he's going to be put on administrative leave, right? And then Shelley says, I haven't heard much about the conversation coming out of Austin and don't wish to wade into that mire myself. Does anyone have an overview of the pulse there? So I haven't been pause for another bit of not breaking news, but an interesting report. There's still a vacant head coaching position in Texas, FBS, North Texas. Mm-hmm. According to Zach Barnett of footballscoop.com, UNT is zeroing in on Texas Tech assistant coach Kenny Perry. So another something to monitor. But back to Beard. I've spent a good amount of time on Longhorn message boards today, and I actually think that for the most part, they're very kind of clear-eyed about kind of the path forward. I think that you're always going to have anybody or somebody, rather, indie fan base that is kind of huffing on the hopium and says, well, hey, there's a pathway to this being okay. And there was a lot of chatter about, well, hey, maybe it was his daughter's boyfriend that he,
right.
And that was quickly debunked. But I think for the most part, I think Longhorn fans recognize that, regardless of kind of how this is adjudicated, whether it's pled down or if he's found innocent or whatever, it's really hard to overcome the optics of your head men's basketball coach, arguably the second most high-profile person at the university behind your football coach, in a jumpsuit, right? In front of a magistrate on a Zoom call.
Yeah, and I don't know the legal wranglings around that sort of thing, but I would think that this is the sort of thing that provides cause in a contractual situation. In other words, that wouldn't have to pay a big hefty buyout. You know, what I don't know enough about is the legal damage done, and I'm sure he's got a fine attorney, as he should.
And he's
entitled, and he's entitled his day in court. So he's a United States citizen. So, but yeah, that's it's gonna make home visits and things like that hard. Go sit across from mom and dad at the kitchen table and go, hey, sure would like to be a part of your son's future.
Kind of feel like with both, I mean, and this is unfortunate, but I feel like in both situations today, with both Beard and with Mike, I think we all kind of know what the outcome is here. We're just kind of waiting for the wheels to turn. I just can't imagine Beard coaching tonight. I'd bet every ounce of every dollar that I own that he doesn't coach tonight.
Yeah.
And I don't see how he survives it. I just don't. I mean, this isn't.
And you're not saying so much that he'll never coach anywhere again, as much as you're saying he's done at Texas.
And I would be shocked if he's not. I mean, this isn't Idaho State,
right?
Right. No disrespect to the Bengals. This is Texas, and for as much as we dig UT for arrogance, etc. They kind of think of themselves as this kind of beacon of higher education and athletics, whether that's fair or unfair or deserved or not, whatever. They're not gonna just sweep this under the rug, right? This isn't like, hey, he got a DUI, which is bad.
I was going to say the same thing. Not a DUI. It's not a bar fight. It's not a crime of well, I shouldn't say that, but it's not something that can be sort of apologized away. Yeah, I don't, because we've seen Texas coaches, we've seen others survive a DUI, not violent, fiery, crashy DWI.
Did Augie have something?
But Augie had a deal. His was similar to Tony Russo, where it was an extra glass of wine. Absolutely was legally over the limit, no question. And maybe in both of their cases had like fallen asleep at a red light or
and Mark Few.
Yeah, there you go. But that sort of thing is a little bit different than what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, according to the police account of this, and granted, two sides to every story, and this is what the justice system is about, and we all know innocent until proven guilty, but the police account of this is that his hands were around a woman's neck. There's really no. I think with like DUI kind of stuff, there's this like there, but for the grace of God, go I. Right? We were all 20 something at one point. Mm-hmm. One wrong decision here, you could have maybe ended up in a spot like that. That's not the case with this. This is something else entirely. There's no coming back from that. More Tech Talk next.
It's every Red Raiders favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hi there, it's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. We're happy that you're spending part of your day with us. We'd love to hear what you have to say on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. The other story that I neglected to mention, it's been that kind of day, is that Brett Murphy reporting that there is momentum for Oklahoma and Texas to leave the Big 12 in 2024. So potentially this upcoming next season would be their last in the Big 12, but a lot has to be kind of figured out and hammered out for that to happen. Back to the chat line. Trace in Dallas.
Which would be 1 year early.
1 year early. Yeah, it's no big deal. Trace in Dallas. Hey, boys, not trying to be insensitive, but was Leach's lawsuit with the university ever resolved, or is it still ongoing?
My understanding of it is that he lost the lawsuit, or that it was appealed up several levels, but never got resolved. Because I think it then came down to the immunity question, the thing that
sovereign immunity,
that state employees, and that was the part that was never really overturned. And so I don't know if it's the proper terminology to say he lost the lawsuit, but I think it went away. He lost, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's never been any kind of formal announcement that his campaign against, I don't even want to say Texas Tech here, but like the administration at the time of the university, et cetera. I don't know that that's ever been like formally announced as like being over, because you had the investigative reporter, and I'm going to use that term very loosely, from Houston who would gin up some stuff and file some open records requests. But I think the basic answer is, yeah, it's done. But
legally, whether he chooses to continue the PR campaign, I don't know. But I'll say this, I don't know that I heard him reference that since the bowl game last year. Now, I'd be lying if I said I sit in front of Mississippi State press conferences and those things, but somewhere in the bowl game, maybe even after the game, that somebody had asked him. It doesn't change the fact that Texas Tech owes me money, but Coach Covey did a good job, or whatever it was that he said. And so that part. That was the last I've heard about it, and that's not to say his beliefs changed, but maybe it just sort of went away.
T. Lee says Leach, Magel, and the ag teacher at Monterey were best friends.
Yep.
The ag teacher used to tell some great stories of all of them. Someone else says this: how about Texas circling the wagons to see how to sweep it under the carpet? That's what happens in Austin right now. I just don't think that's going to happen. On the one hand, I don't think that the Travis County, DA or prosecutor's office or whatever is just going to like shrug their shoulders at a domestic violence charge. And then two, like say that this does play out. Say that UT comes out with a statement, hey, we're going to let the justice system work through the process, and until then, Beard's our coach. Just hypothetically, again, I don't think that will happen, but let's just kind of play that game out. What are you going to have at every road game that Texas plays? You're going to have posters everywhere in the student section, whether it's in Lubbock or Manhattan or Lawrence or Waco or wherever, with Beard's mugshot. Or Beard standing in front of the magistrate
in stripes. Yeah.
Right? Or even worse still, some insensitive jokes,
domestic violence, women's groups picketing outside. I mean, that's not out of the question, man. Baylor had a couple players in 2000, a couple baseball players kill a cat, and it was a cat that hung around a Taco Bell there in Waco, and somebody killed it, broke its neck, threw it in the truck, and got arrested for it, and it became a whole thing. They had PETA people, shockingly, in Austin, and that's sort of where I was going. That's 22 years ago. The PETA people showed up at the Baylor at Texas baseball games, and had signs outside in the parking lot and whatever. And I think we're on a different level here with this. And this, I'm with you. The Austin community and just how they see themselves. You talked about, you use the term arrogance. You and I've referenced that, like with Stanford over the last few weeks, and Cal to a certain extent, not in terms of athletic excellence, but in the way they see themselves. I just can't imagine. I cannot imagine that would be something that they're going to stand by him on this crime.
No, I think like there's a A&M has, as its defensive coordinator, a coach that was dismissed at Maryland for allegations of mistreatments of players, and one of those players died. Okay,
yeah, they're like over conditioning, like strength coach, kind of crazy stuff.
Their new offensive coordinator is Bobby Petrino, right? Enough said there. Widely regarded as a great offensive mind, but just a not very good human being. But A&M doesn't care, right? Because they want to win, and that's why they're paying $100+ million. Over the course of however many years to Jimbo Fisher. Like, it's very transparent. Texas is not like that, right? They have the same ambitions, but they fancy themselves as, an Ivy League caliber institution. And part of that is paying lip service athletically. Hey, we're not going to just give out these insane contracts to our coaches. You should want to coach here because we're Texas, not because we're paying you $100 million. That kind of thing. So them just sweeping this under the rug does not sync, does not jive with anything else that they've done. Now, granted, having a lot of situations like this, I think he's their first coach in the last 20 years to actually get arrested and booked. But I just don't see it. This on the chat line. Someone says, first they've gotten to an assault arrest. This did not happen overnight. Prayers up for Beard's wife and family.
I think that's fiance. Isn't
fiance,
it still?
right?
Which surprised me. I thought they had gotten married, but I don't know. That may have just been because they were together and I believe engaged when he was still here. And my assumption was that surely that had happened by now. But yeah, it's fiance.
And that's the thing to keep in mind too, right? I think there are a lot of us, in this sphere that enjoy when bad things happen to Chris Beard, loses a game, stubs his toe, whatever. But there are a lot more people involved here with real feelings, real lives, and that's ultimately the most important thing, not just some Twitter snark. More Tech Talk next.
The podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey there, Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Dr. Mike Gustafson and Clint Scott. I'm Aaron Dickens. We're joining you today until 6. We'd love to hear what you have to say on a very busy Monday afternoon. Let us know on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. All guests appear via the Benchmark Hotline. South Texas Ambassador Preston says this. I think if this comes to pass, this is referring to Mike Leach, you have to put him in the Hall of Honor. I do believe even with the problems that happened with Texas Tech, Tech football history cannot be told without him, and he belongs in the Jones. And it's maybe a good idea to pay the money or set a scholarship deal. Don't know about that last part.
Yeah, the very last part.
But, yeah, I mean,
I didn't get the last part. But
I think he's saying that the money that Leach thinks that he's owed, put that into a scholarship deal.
Okay, whatever. I got you. I think the Hall of Honor thing, agree with you in terms of his legacy. I mean, he's just the winningest coach in school history. And that's really the genesis of or part of the conversation last week is when you and I talked about on Friday is, and the trickier part of that was having him back, how that would work. You can induct people who don't want to be in it, but you don't want to induct someone who doesn't want to be in it and then publicly spurns it in a way that makes you look bad. Like, hey, and so. Hopefully there's a miracle here, and this conversation is a little different. But were he to pass at this point, that sort of thing, that sort of legacy moment that we've talked about could be a little bit easier to grasp a lot sooner than 20 years from now. And it's a shame. I mean, it's a shame for a lot of reasons.
This in the chat line. Zero chance that anything happens to Beard legally. The Texas/Austin elite will have this covered up or charges dropped. I just don't think that happens. Now, again, I can't speak to what happens legally.
Sure.
Right. But you can't escape the optics of your head basketball coach wearing a prison jumpsuit and, getting a mug shot. And then B, I think that you should not underestimate the response and the feelings and the pressure that will come from campus groups, from domestic violence groups, from, in fact, city Austin folks. I think that's a component here as well.
Yeah, women. I mean, there's student athletes, women student athletes that are going to be that are playing in that same arena. I mean,
what's the guy's name? Arterio Morris.
Morris.
Yeah, he had a similar. Well, he had a domestic violence issue earlier in the off season, or last year or something in his past, and I think that was a bit of a controversy when he didn't, encounter any kind of university punishment or program punishment, and so you have that layer to this as well.
Feels like there's a Texas Monthly story coming, doesn't it? And what is that story going to say? That this Chris Del Conte has a chance to.
I mean, at some point, this becomes about self-preservation for Chris Del Conte too, right? Because he's your guy.
Mm-hmm. Very much so, and I mean, and you said it well too. If you're Texas, you're also feeling like we can go get the next Chris Beard. Now they haven't had a ton of luck with that sort of. They had some great hires, but if you're Texas and you've got all of that swag and all those resources, you go, you know what? Let him go. We're going to, we'll go find the next guy.
That kind of goes back to this isn't Idaho State, right? Where you kind of captured lightning in a bottle, and you have this amazing coach, and you're winning at such a clip that is so outside of your norm that you're willing to kind of put up with some bad headlines, some pressure, etc., to kind of hope it blows over. With Texas, again, the way that they see themselves is that, as you just said, we can get this done. We can get another person like this, no problem.
There's people in their camp that believe they can pick up the phone and call Kelvin Sampson and have him there by March or April 10th or whatever. And that's Kelvin, just for the record, that's the coach of the number one team in the country who's 3 hours down the road right now. And I'm not saying that's their hire. I'm just saying their level of arrogance is, let's go see what Popovich is doing.
This on the chat line. It would have been cool to see a college coach when I got locked up would have given me someone to talk to. They probably had a special room for him. Seriously, though, prayers up for Leach. Someone says, yeah, drinking buddy Ogden picked him up. What a wingman. This in the chat line. This is a perfect example of why domestic assault victims face such a terrible situation in our legal system. They get intimidated by the system, and his attorney should never be speaking on her behalf. Yes, that was so for folks that don't catch the reference here, the attorney for Beard has been quoted today as saying that, and I'm paraphrasing, that the reported victim wants the charges dropped. That's his words. And he was asked by the media, I don't know, about an hour ago, when Beard was walking out of the jail, hey, I don't know, Mr. Pinton or whatever his name is, how can you speak for the victim here? Are you representing her as well? No answer. So you're exactly right. And I think, too, it should be pointed out, from what I've read today, even if the alleged victim here comes out and says, hey, I just fibbing, or I don't want any charges brought, or whatever, even if they fully recant their story, that doesn't change anything. Right? Because the DA can still pursue charges, and I think in some cases, with at least domestic violence cases, it's fair to wonder, okay, are you being pressured by family? Are you changing your mind because of X, Y, or Z, financial components, etc.? So
Yeah, in some ways that's sort of a classic. I'm out of my league on this topic,
sure,
but that's sort of a classic cycle of that there's contrition and he didn't mean it, and
and we don't even know if that's true.
Right, exactly.
That's just what he said. We haven't heard from the alleged victim or her representation.
Right. It's great what the texter said about his attorney speaking for her. Like, you immediately get into some dicey stuff.
More Tech Talk next.
The podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey there, it's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Dr. Mike Gustafson and Clint Scott. I'm Aaron Dickens. We're joining you today until 6. We'll have Red Raider basketball with Mark Adams coming up at that time, followed by Monday Night Football, Pats at the Cardinals tonight, 7 o'clock here on Double T 97.3. We'd love to get your thoughts and comments on the program today. Of course, mostly talking about the tragic situation involving Mike Leach in the hospital in Mississippi, critical condition, not doing well, and then, of course, the arrest today of Texas men's basketball coach Chris Beard. Fire away on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet97.3.com.
You gave one piece of good news about Malik Dunlap coming back.
Great news.
Big one, yeah. Because the commentary following the final game and sort of headed into off-season, bowl game notwithstanding, was the 2 defensive tackles and the 2 corners. And 3/4 of those dudes are committed to come back, as Malik Dunlap tweeted in here in the last hour that he's back for next year. But it looks like Tech got their first portal piece. Western Kentucky center, Stotts. I believe it's ST.
Has that been announced?
AATS. I don't know.
Because he visited this weekend.
Got it. That may be what I'm. That may be what I'm thinking.
There was a bat signal fired up on Twitter.
Got it.
The recruiting bat signal. Hey, we got some good news. There's not been an announcement yet by any prospect that I've seen.
Not the follow up we need.
Because I think most assume it is Rusty Stats.
Got it. Which
would be a very nice addition. But I just wanted to make sure that you hadn't seen something official that I hadn't.
I have not. I should defer to you on that for sure. But I know it's close, and the idea would be that he would come in, and of course, tons of familiarity with the team, the
his
offense,
position coach.
You bet.
Sure.
I don't know if he's buddies with Cole Spencer. Be decent chance he'd be playing next to Cole Spencer, who was also teammates there at Western Kentucky. It would allow Wilburn to move over to guard, which is something that Coach McGuire and his staff have. That's sort of been talked about, I guess. And so I guess the conversation has been offensive lineman and team speed, especially at receiver, right? Maybe team speed, but a receiver specifically to take the, to stretch defenses and whatnot. And so that may be one of that, and a healthy Cole Spencer might be the best news if they can get it.
And then Dunlap, he's second in the Big 12 in pass breakups per game. Had an interception, played in 11 games, played in 7 games last year. A lot of experience. I mean, this is a luxury you've not had a whole lot. Because even in some of the years where your defense has been okay, I don't know that you've ever kind of thought, oh man, our Tech corners are just outstanding. Like just Jamar Wall, was kind of that for a while. But
McPherson for
sure
playing for the Eagles,
sure,
who was also a transfer, Penn State transfer, I believe.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm with you. It's been a position that's been fraught for a long time, and that DB room this year was not bad. A lot of transfers in there, a lot of guys who started their careers elsewhere, and a lot of guys who came here during the Wells regime, because that was and what Wells inherited from Cliff was a mess, especially on that side of the ball specifically. But and so his portal additions, a lot of guys back then that had 3 years, 4 years, plus those were guys that have had since then been helped by COVID years and such. So I to get these two, because the other thing, and I remember us talking about this after Tech kind of put it on West Virginia here, and kind of ran through them and ran over them. I remember thinking, one of the things that I wrote down in my vast notebook of whatever,
the to be sponsored.
Yes, that's right.
Binder.
That's right. And I don't remember what I was saying, but how we bullied the West Virginia DBs.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically remember saying that it looked like the teams of years ago, you know, the Mahomes era type teams that were really bad, among the nation's worst defenses, where our DBs would even if they were in the right place, they'd get beat to balls, you know, just because your receiver's big and strong and ours a little guy. You know, just it was constantly that. And this year, not saying these guys were perfect, but we were more of a physical match. There was more. There weren't just gimme touchdowns all over. You know, one or two a game, like it felt like we had back in the day.
This in the chat line from Rachel. Let's not forget that the fiance was quietly let go from friendship. Sounds like they both need some help. I haven't seen that reported. I think that. No one is perfect, but at the same time, I don't know that anything that someone does warrants, you know, hands around their neck. You know, I just this in the chat line. Nobody has been able to explain why his attorneys speaking on the victim's behalf. That is abhorrent. I agree. We have not heard from the alleged victim or her alleged representation, if she has some. Maybe he is, you know, maybe he represents them both. That would seem to be odd, but I don't know. This on the chat line from Bullfighter. How can you say that they won't sweep it under the rug? They still have a kid playing basketball there that got away with something similar, because he's not the head coach, right? He's not. Like, think about, okay, let's just paint this picture here in the 30 seconds that I have left, right? Give or take. 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, great. I can be even more colorful. Think about the reception that Beard got here last year, okay? You know, when he came to Lubbock, and that was just after he left. Think about what that would be like this year. I'm not saying that it's okay or that people should do it. I'm not encouraging this behavior. In fact, I think it's not a good idea or a good look. But you don't have to be very creative to come up with some chants, right, about this whole deal. That would be audible on TV. Not to mention the multiple posters of mugshots and screen captures from the magistrate hearing, etc. Now multiply that by 18, or 9 Big 12 road trips. It's just, and then every time they're on national TV, that will be rehashed. The NCAA tournament, that will be rehashed. Well, of course, Chris Beard coaching after being arrested in December for blah 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 blah. Like that's not going to go away just because, maybe UT hopes it does. It's just they don't have that level of control.
Yeah, I would think the legal fight today for him is for his career. I mean,
that's about salvaging as much of the buyout as you can.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
More Tech Talk next.
The podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, it's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3, the home of the very manly bottoms with Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. I'm joining you today till 6.
Is that our band name, the Manly Bottoms?
It could be, yeah.
If we have like a softball team or something, if that thing ever gets rekindled, is that the name of it?
Better for softball than a band name.
Yeah.
Yes.
Depending on the league, it might actually fit in really well. Love to get your thoughts and comments on the H Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. Of course, the big stories today, the hospitalization of Mike Leach and the arrest of Chris Beard. Did not expect to be talking about either of those things.
No.
A day ago, but here we are.
We're seeing some Twitter activity that Terrence Steele tore his ACL.
That's right.
Yeah, of course, former Red Raider offensive lineman and now Dallas Cowboy.
Always a Red Raider.
Right.
Never
Red. You know what I say, though? You're exactly right. I would never say former Red Raider. I would say former Red Raider offensive lineman.
There you go.
Because I 100% agree with you on this topic. That's why I'm quick to get into. I'm okay if you call me a former Red Raider infielder, but don't say former Red Raider. Don't stop there.
Right?
I can't believe Aaron Dickens just a doctor.
All right, that's fine. No, stop. We're
I feel like it's very
good.
on brand, though.
Yeah,
We're
I
good.
feel like that
I shouldn't be
tracks.
too surprised.
Yeah.
But
How long have you been doing this show with me?
Would you? What would be your preference if we were just saying former Red Raider? You would say
I
you would
say,
correct
I
that
would
to
say
say.
former Tech offensive lineman.
Got it.
no,
Yeah.
first he'd say
And if we were doing that as
It's
a
like, actually, as I push my
Yeah.
glasses up off
and
the nose.
and that's probably proper AP style manual form. Former Texas Tech lineman rather than former Red
What
Raider.
always gets me is, this is probably my own personal crusade that no one else cares about, but like when somebody uses in a sentence like, Texas Tech picked up a commitment that they really needed versus, because I think it should be it. Yeah, but whatever. No, I don't think anybody else cares about that.
Andrea Watson will wordsmith stuff like that in a way that you and she have that in common. You've probably never sat down and had a beer and talked about wordsmithing.
Probably
y'all
not,
have
yeah.
that in common. I'm just trust me on that.
This on the chat line. Dickens, is that why the schedules are taking so long to be released? Because Oklahoma and Texas would only be here for one more year. I don't know why the schedules are taking so long to be released.
I thought about that, especially if there's a pairing. If there's a home road component or a 2-year component to it, that could be the case. But
At some point, you got to believe
Yeah.
or get off the pot, right? I mean,
yeah,
you've got plans to make. I think it's also interesting, too, that it's been now maybe 2 months since the multiple reports about the Big 12 agreeing to a new deal. What are you grinning about? Are you clipping something? You have a very like evil grin on your face now.
I have never had an evil
Okay.
grin.
Well, like we haven't. That's not been officially announced yet, right?
know.
Which I think is interesting.
I hope that's a good thing.
This in the chat line from Jeff. In a post-game Oklahoma show from the field after the Tech win over Oklahoma, one of the folks on the show referred to the game as OU's last game in Lubbock, which had me wondering at the time. Yeah, I mean, I think no matter what happens, whether Oklahoma is gone after 24 or if they wait until 25, or I guess after 23 or after 24, I think it's probably safe to bet that was their last game in Lubbock.
Yeah. You'd have to be playing them twice to assure, and I don't think there's been to assure that you'd play them here and there, and I don't think there's been any reporting or leaks or anything else that have pointed to Tech at playing either of the Oklahoma schools this year. So I guess there's a fraction of a chance that you could be going to one of those places in 2 years, but it's starting to get slim.
I'm perfectly happy with a couple weeks ago being the last time you play Oklahoma.
Yep.
As a member of the Big 12 Conference. Whether they leave after 23 or 24, it's a fine parting note for me.
Yeah, and on the other hand, I think if you were saying, all right, who do you want to play every year? Who's your three team whatever? Or, we don't know exactly how that's going to shape up, but I feel like I want to keep the Oklahoma State thing in there.
Sure. Yeah.
And I feel like if you were giving me a choice of who do you want to play every year as sort of that standing opponent, I'm taking Oklahoma State.
This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. I did notice in the video of Beard's release from jail that his driver was wearing Texas gear, could have at least put on another school's gear. Yeah, it's Chris Ogden.
Yeah, former Tech assistant. Yeah.
You kind of wonder about his what he's thinking right now, considering he left the head coaching job to join Beard's staff. Rachel says this in the chat line, already seeing his mugshot as a meme with hashtag Bookem. Jace says Art Briles is basically on a no hire list, and rightfully so. With this charge, Beard just sealed his fate for several years. Yeah, because I mean, like, if we separate the horribleness of the charge and the many people affected by this, namely the victim, but also the families, and look at it purely from just a basketball and college sports perspective, it's not unusual to see coaches rehab their careers, right? Hugh Freeze has done that in a very good way.
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin did that. Billy Gillespie did that. Bobby Knight kind of did that at Texas Tech. I mean, it's not unusual at all. But I struggle to recall. Man, it just got really cold in here. I struggle to recall an example of a coach with a domestic violence charge like this, kind of going through the Nick Saban coaching rehab school. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like DUI, one thing. NCAA violations, one thing. Even Petrino lying to his superiors, misusing university funds, cheating on his wife.
Hugh Freeze along those lines.
Hugh Freeze,
with
with
prostitutes
some,
and
right. But that stuff just kind of it pales in comparison to the heaviness of a domestic violence charge, even if it is pled down or if he's found not guilty or whatever. I mean, just the stink of this will not wash away easily for Chris Beard.
And I guess if you're comparing him and Bryles, he's got Beard has age on his side. Beard, I can't believe we talked about all this the other day. Not in this light, of course, but we were talking about what's Beard's age. But at 49, there's time for him. But I'm with you. It's not going to be everybody's not going to be clamoring to get him on campus.
This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line from MC. Beard had everything he could have ever wanted in Lubbock. Bad move, bro.
Yep.
Matthew says this is terrible all the way around. On an insignificant sports level, it sucks that we can't enjoy another Chris Beard visit. Last year's environment was probably the best it will ever be.
You've been listening to the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3. Check out Double T973.com for more from Lubbock Sports Station.